Hello everyone. Welcome to the analysis of the part 6 of the budget and economic survey. This is going to be the last part of the analysis of the budget as well as the economic survey. In this particular week, I shall be discussing the theme of infrastructure as well as inclusive growth. Before starting with the discussion, there's a small announcement for all of you. So some of you were asking for the PPTs in the white background. So what I've done is whatever discussions that we have had so far, for all of those discussions, I have converted into white background PPTs. And the link to those PPTs are provided in the description of the video. You can download those white background PPTs because it becomes quite easier for you guys to take a printout. So let's start with the discussion of the last themes, that is infrastructure as well as inclusive growth. As far as the chapter of services sector is concerned, from the economic survey, there is nothing important as far as the prelims examination is concerned. So whatever things which are important, I have already covered it in the first part, that is the theme of growth and development. So let's directly start with the discussion of the infrastructure sector. Before starting with the discussion of infrastructure sector, let's quickly have a look at how many questions have been asked from the theme of infrastructure sector in the last 14 years, and more importantly, from where the questions have been asked. Based upon the importance, that is number of questions asked, and from where the questions are asked, you can easily get to know as to what topics become important for your upcoming prelims examination. So let's have a look at the breakup. So in the last 14 years, as you can see, we had approximately 15 questions from the theme of infrastructure sector, which means on an average, we can expect only one question from the infrastructure sector. And with respect to from where the questions are likely to be asked, questions are likely to be asked from three major topics within infrastructure. The first one is about important infrastructure projects in news, especially those infrastructure projects which have got launched in the recent times, big mega infrastructure projects. Second one is with respect to some major global initiatives related to infrastructure. And third one is important policies or initiatives of the government with respect to infrastructure. So for example, you can see these are the previous year questions related to important infrastructure projects which are in news. In prelims 2024, there was a question as to, in the recent past, which of the above have been constructed as greenfield projects? Some of you might be knowing that infrastructure projects can be categorized broadly into two types: greenfield projects and brownfield projects. Greenfield infrastructure projects are those infrastructure projects which are built right from scratch. That is what is greenfield. Brownfield assets are already existing infrastructure projects which might be upgraded or let's say modernized. So in this question asked in prelims 2024, you were required to identify as to which of these airports have been built right from scratch, the greenfield airports. And the right answer to this question was 192 only. This was in 2024. In 2023, there was this question about the important ports of India. In particular, please focus on the second port, which is Mundra port. It is being said that Mundra port is one of the largest private owned port in India. This port is owned by Adani Group. And as you can see from this particular article in Indian Express, it says that Adani Group of companies enjoys dominance with respect to the port sector. So based upon this information, you could have answered this particular question asked in prelims 2023. In prelims 2023, there was another question which was with respect to important connectivity projects of India. Like there was a question with respect to golden quadrilateral. This was in prelims 2023. So in prelims 2023, there were two questions. In 2022, there was this question about renewable energy sector in India, which is with respect to solar energy. So can you see a particular trend in the last 4 years? In 1 year, UPSC asked a question about airports. In another year, a question was asked with respect to ports. Then in another year, a question with respect to road sector. And then a question related to renewable energy, right? And you must understand that they are not very, very random questions. These topics or these infrastructure projects, in fact, they were in news. So while you are preparing for prelims 2025, what you have to do is you have to keep an eye for some of the mega infrastructure projects, big infrastructure projects, which have been launched in the roads, railways, ports, as well as renewable energy sector. This is a key takeaway from the analysis of the previous year question. Next, if you see PYQs related to important policies or initiatives of the government. So if government has taken any major policy with respect to development of infrastructure sector, you may get a question from there. Example being 2019, we had a question with respect to coal sector. You must understand around this particular time, the coal sector was in news. The reason was coal mining is in a way monopolized by government through the Coal India Corporation, Coal India Limited, which is into mining of coal, and only Coal India Limited can mine the coal. So we came out with a policy which enabled even the private sector to mine coal in India. So this was a major shift with respect to coal mining. That is why this question was asked with respect to coal sector. In prelims 2016, we had a question related to Uday scheme. Uday scheme stands for Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana. This particular scheme was launched by the government in order to bring about financial turnaround of the loss-making discoms. So this was a question in the context of a government policy, which is a scheme which is called as Uday. Prelims 2016, another question related to District Mineral Foundation, which is provided under Mines and Minerals Development and Regulation Act, which is also called in short as MMDR Act. So MMDR Act has a provision related to District Mineral Foundation, and based upon this, the question was asked. Prelims 2017, a question related to National Investment and Infrastructure Fund. Then about the solar production. Then you can see there are other important questions related to important policies of the government. So firstly, you should focus on some mega infrastructure projects of India. Second, whatever important policies the government has taken, important schemes, initiatives of the government with respect to infrastructure, on those things also UPSC is likely to ask you questions. Third, if there are some major global initiatives related to infrastructure, UPSC might ask you questions from those global initiatives as well. So based upon the analysis of previous year questions, we have identified as to what are the important topics that we must focus upon. So that is what I'm going to do as far as the infrastructure sector is concerned. So firstly, I'm going to discuss a basic overview about the infrastructure sector. That is, what do you mean by infrastructure sector? Then why we should focus on infrastructure sector? What is the present status of financing of infrastructure in India? Once we have a basic understanding about infrastructure, then we will take up the big initiatives of the government, the major policy initiatives of the government with respect to infrastructure sector. So with respect to, the overview of infrastructure, you can see this question which was asked in mains 2021. This question was asked for 15 marks, and the question here is you are required to discuss about importance of infrastructure sector in promoting rapid and inclusive economic growth, and what is India's experience in that. So this was a question asked in mains 2021 for 15 marks. So let's briefly touch upon the importance of infrastructure sector. First and foremost, whenever we say infrastructure, please understand that infrastructure sector includes physical infrastructure, which is roads, railways, ports, airports, and so on. It includes social infrastructure, that is schools, hospitals, irrigation projects, housing, sanitation, and it also includes digital infrastructure like telecommunication towers, broadband connection, and so on. So you must have a very broad understanding of infrastructure, where infrastructure sector is not just physical. It includes physical, social, and digital infrastructure sector. Please have a look at the question which was asked in mains 2021, wherein you were required to highlight the role of infrastructure sector in promoting inclusive growth. If a student interprets the word infrastructure as just physical infrastructure, a student will not be able to do justice to the answer. But if you are able to interpret infrastructure as physical infrastructure, social infrastructure, and digital infrastructure, then you could write a very good answer with respect to role of infrastructure sector in promoting inclusive growth, right? So that is why you have to understand, when I say infrastructure, it is all encompassing. Secondly, why should India focus on creation of infrastructure? Obviously, there are multiple reasons as to why India should focus on infrastructure, but let me tell you the most important point. Right now, we are a $4 trillion economy, and we have set a vision to become $7 trillion economy by 2030 and to become Viksit Bharat by 2047. Repeatedly, the economic survey has emphasized that if you want to become Viksit Bharat by 2047, the investment rate in the economy, which is right now somewhere like 30%, it should increase to at least 35%. So we have to shift towards investment-led economy. What are the benefits if we shift to investment-led economy? Think of it. If we are able to promote more amount of investment in the economy, here, because of the more investment, the GDP of India would increase, right? As the GDP increases, we can say that income of the people will also increase, the per capita income will increase, right? Now think, if people are able to earn more amount of money, if per capita income increases, we can say that ability of the people to save more amount of money also increases. People will save more amount of money. In what form will they save money? They will save money in the form of deposits with the banks, in the form of shares, in the form of bonds, and so on. So as the savings in the economy increases, this can further lead to increase in the investment. So to become Viksit Bharat, we have to have this self-sustaining virtuous economic cycle. If you look at countries such as Japan, US, or in the recent past, China, most of these countries have focused on investment-led model to increase their GDP size. So India can emulate the development model of these countries and try to become Viksit Bharat by 2047. But the question is, if you are thinking of making investment, which sector should we make more amount of investment? A sector which has a capacity of local multiplier effect. And that particular sector is considered to be infrastructure sector. How so? If government is spending more amount of money on creation of infrastructure like roads, railways, ports, airports, schools, hospitals, drinking water, sanitation, housing, and so on, if the government is spending more amount of money on creation of infrastructure, we can say that demand for goods and services, that is raw materials like iron, steel, cement, electricity, would increase. This will in turn encourage private sector to also make more amount of investment in the economy. This we call it as crowding in effect. Crowding in effect means increase in government expenditure on infrastructure will encourage more private sector investment. If private sector is making more amount of investment in the economy, we can say that we will be able to create more number of jobs. This becomes quite important because you know that Indian economy is quite infamous for jobless growth. So we can create large number of jobs. We can ensure that people's income level increases. GDP of the economy also increases. So it is being said that a government spends 1 rupee on creation of infrastructure, the output increases by 2.5. For every 1 rupee spent by the government, output increases by 2.5, which is, we call it as multiplier effect. This kind of multiplier effect we need to bring about in Indian economy, and that is possible through investment in infrastructure sector. 2 years back, finance minister came out with a blueprint for Amrit Kal. Amrit Kal, as you know, is a time frame from India at 75 to India at 100. This particular phase, we are calling it as Amrit Kal. And this blueprint for Amrit Kal is entirely based upon creation of infrastructure sector. So it is being said that if you are able to focus on infrastructure sector, these are a kind of virtuous economic cycle that will be able to bring about. But let's understand what is the present status of financing of infrastructure sector. According to this year's economic survey, it is being said that in the last 5 years, that is from 2019 to 2023, 4 to 5 years, you have government as well as private sector who is spending on infrastructure. And from the government side, you have center and state. If you look at the share of public investment, that is the government investment in infrastructure, it is 78%, comprising of 49% by the center and 29% by the states. Total is 78. And the share of private sector investment is a mere 22%. You can very well observe with respect to financing of infrastructure, I would say that majority of the heavy lifting, that is investment in infrastructure, is done by the government. Private sector, in a way, its share in investment is quite poor. There is an organization called as CRISIL. This organization has tried to estimate as to how much money we need to invest in infrastructure sector. According to CRISIL, we need to spend 143 lakh crores by 2030 on infrastructure. But the problem here is, if you see last 7 years, in last 7 years, we have spent around 67 lakh crore in the last 7 years. So you know the problem with the financing of infrastructure sector here. So whatever money which we have spent in last 7 years, almost double that money we are required to spend in the next 5 years itself. So our need for infrastructure financing is quite humongous. It's quite huge. And obviously, when we have to spend so much amount of money on infrastructure, we cannot expect that government alone will do all the heavy lifting. The burden should also be taken over by the private sector. So if you look at this year's economic survey, the theme of this year's economic survey, even though it has not gone into the specifics of it, the economic survey in its very first page has highlighted that it is a time where private sector should come and start making more amount of investment in infrastructure sector. So because this aspect is in news, in your mains, you may get a question something like this, that if you want to achieve the vision of Viksit Bharat, we need to plug the gap in infrastructure financing. So discuss the reasons for lower share of private sector in, investment in the infrastructure sector. So you are required to know what are the problems as to why private sector is not coming forth to make investment in infrastructure, and what we should do. That is the strategies. Now, as far as the problems, strategies, and present status is concerned, I have already highlighted here in the form of a table. So in this particular table, what I've done is, individually I've highlighted the problem as to why share of private sector investment is lower and what strategies we must adopt. I do believe that you should be able to read these things on your own and understand. And at the same time, let me tell you, in case if you have not been able to understand any point, please let me know in the comments section. I have no problem, explaining any of these points. So feel free to ask any of these points in the comments section. Because it's mostly a mains related topic, I'm just keeping it short so that we can cover the more of prelims related topics. So let's now move to the next topic. Next topic is National Infrastructure Pipeline. Remember, I showed you that in the previous year prelims, repeatedly questions are asked with respect to important schemes, policies, or initiatives of the government with respect to infrastructure sector. So, firstly, I will take up all the major initiatives of the government with respect to infrastructure sector, and then individually I'll pick up one on infrastructure like railways, roads, ports. Within these sectors, I will discuss what are the major infrastructure projects launched in the last, let's say, 1.5 to 2 years. So let's start with the first topic, which is National Infrastructure Pipeline. What is this National Infrastructure Pipeline? Under National Infrastructure Pipeline, government has set a target to spend 111 lakh crores by 2025 in order to create world-class infrastructure. 111 lakh crores. What kind of infrastructure? This is quite important for your prelims. 111 lakh crore, we are going to spend it both on greenfield projects, that is completely new projects, as well as brownfield projects, that is modernization or upgradation of existing infrastructure. Apart from that, please understand that NIP also includes both social infrastructure as well as physical infrastructure. So NIP includes greenfield and brownfield, and it also includes physical and social. Apart from that, what becomes important is the funding pattern. That is, who is spending how much amount of money under NIP. As you can see, under NIP, it is money is going to spend by center, state, and the private sector. And among these three, the majority of amount of money is going to be spent in a way by the state, who will spend 40%, followed by center 39%, and the private sector is 21%. This funding pattern is quite important for your prelims examination. And then information related to all the infrastructure projects which are part of NIP, all of this information is uploaded onto a particular platform, online portal, which is called as Invest India Grid platform. So basically it provides for seamless flow of information between the ministries and departments. As far as your prelims examination is concerned, if you know these 2 to 3 points, that is more than sufficient with respect to NIP. For mains, probably you'll have to go deeper, like what are the challenges in NIP, what we should do to address these challenges. That is more important from the mains perspective. From prelims, this is sufficient. So look at this prelims MCQ. The share of private sector investment in infrastructure is higher than the public sector investment, which is incorrect. Share of private sector investment is 22%, and public sector investment, that is government, is 78%. Government has launched initiatives such as NIP, NMP to attract more private sector investment in infrastructure. It is right. So the right answer in this case is D. Practice MCQ number 2. With reference to NIP, consider the following statements. NIP seeks to spend 111 lakh crores to create world-class infrastructure, which is right. It includes both physical and social infrastructure projects, right. Central government provides for highest funding. Like I said, it's not central government, it is state government, right. So right answer is 1 and 2 only. Let's move to the next topic, which is national monetization pipeline. In fact, in this year budget, there has been a mention of national monetization pipeline as well. That is why it becomes quite important. So what exactly is national monetization pipeline? Let's understand this in detail. See, government has spent huge amount of money to create infrastructure projects like roads, railways, ports, airports, telecommunication towers, stadiums, right? Transmission lines. So government has spent huge amount of money in these infrastructure projects. But there are two problems here. Problem number 1. Government is required to spend huge amount of money on maintenance of this infrastructure projects. Problem number 2. Some of these infrastructure might not be efficiently utilized, or they may be underutilized. Example, let's talk about stadiums. Government has built a large number of stadiums, especially during Commonwealth Games, right? Now, these stadiums are not efficiently utilized. And in fact, the government is spending huge amount of money on maintenance of these stadiums. So instead of being an asset, they are becoming a liability because of the fact that government is spending huge amount of money on their maintenance. Same, let's say about other infrastructure project like airports. Government has built airports across India, but government is required to spend huge amount of money on maintenance of this airports, right? So what we are trying to do is we are going to identify all these assets which are underutilized or where the government is spending huge amount of money for their maintenance. So here what we do, we identify all the underutilized core assets. And please have a look at what do you mean by core assets. Core assets means roads, railway stations, ports, airports, stadiums, telecommunication towers, and so on. After identifying these underutilized core assets, what will the government do is government will lease these assets to the private sector for next 25 to 40 years. Please look at the word. The word is lease, not sell. Lease means we are simply transferring these infrastructure projects to the private sector for next 25 to 40 years. We are not selling these assets. So as soon as the government leases these assets to the private sector will give money to the government because it is taking control of the infrastructure projects. So what will the government do? Government will get that money. Using that money, government can build new infrastructure projects, right? So look at the sequence of events. If I am the government, I will build a infrastructure project. Once a infrastructure project is built, I will transfer that infrastructure project to the private sector for next 25 to 40 years. And upon the transfer, I will immediately get money. Using that money, I will create a new infrastructure project. And that infrastructure project is once again leased to the private sector. I will get back the money. Using that money, I'll create a new infrastructure project, right? So NMP is very, it is called as a asset recycling initiative. You're recycling assets. Now the question is, what will private sector do after taking over the infrastructure project? Once the private sector takes over the infrastructure project, private sector will spend money to upgrade that infrastructure project. And after upgrading that infrastructure project, private sector will collect user charges from the people who use this particular infrastructure. It is collecting user charges for two reasons. Reason number one, it has paid some money to the government. It will recover that particular money. Second, it will collect user charges for maintenance of that particular infrastructure project. Example, let's say there's a railway station. Government is spending huge amount of money on maintenance of railway station. Government will lease out the railway station to the private sector for next 25 to 40 years. Private sector will modernize the railway station. And once the railway station is modernized, private sector will collect user charges from the passengers who use that railway station. By doing so, it will recover back the money that it has paid to the government, plus private sector will use that money for the maintenance of the railway. India's first railway station, which has been built through public-private partnership mode, is Rani Kamlapati Railway Station in Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh. Whatever logic I discussed with respect to railway station, you could expand the same logic to airports as well. So Delhi's Indira Gandhi T3 terminal has also been built through this particular model. The private sector will have a control over this infrastructure project for next 20 to 25 to 40 years. And once the lease period ends, it will transfer back the infrastructure project back to the government. So this is what is national monetization pipeline. Just think, what is the benefit for the government? Benefit number one, government is not required to pay for the maintenance. Benefit number two, government gets upfront capital. Using that capital, the government can build new infrastructure project. Third and biggest benefit is, once the lease period ends, government gets back a modernized and upgraded infrastructure project. And you know the best part here? We are doing all of this without selling the infrastructure project to the private sector. What is the benefit for the private sector? It might so happen that private sector pays 100 crores to the government and spends 50 crores on maintenance of infrastructure, but private sector may have earned 200 crores. So if it has earned 200 crores, paid 100 crores to the government, 50 crores for maintenance, it is having a net profit of 50 crores. Benefit for the private sector. Benefit for the consumer is, we will have access to world-class infrastructure projects. Example being the Rani Kamlapati railway station or Indira Gandhi's T3 terminal. So here, every stakeholder in a way gets benefit out of NM. There are some important points related to NMP which you should know here. NMP will involve monetization of only underutilized core assets. Non-core assets such as land and buildings are not included under NMP. National monetization pipeline is not privatization because we are not selling off these assets. It is a form of public-private partnership. It's a form of PPP where private sector is in a way involved in operation and maintenance of an infrastructure project. So it is nothing but a PPP. In fact, I would say it's a fancy name for public-private partnership. We initially set a target to raise 6 lakh crores by 2025. But in this year's budget, Finance Minister has set a new target. The target is to raise 10 lakh crores by end of 2030. And please remember, NMP is led by Niti Aayog. So having understood about NMP, let's take up a prelims question for practice. The NMP seeks to lease or sell non-core assets. It is not part of NMP. Please understand. NMP is a form of PPP. Yes. NMP is led by Niti Aayog. Yes. Answer is 2 and 3 only. Now let's come to the next initiative, which is Gati Shakti. What is Gati Shakti? Right now, there are multiple ministries and departments involved in creation of infrastructure. These ministries and departments include Ministry of Road, Ministry of Railways, Ministry of Port, Shipping and Inland Waterways, Ministry of Civil Aviation, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, right? So we have different ministries and departments involved in creation of infrastructure. The problem is these ministries and departments, they are working in silos. Silos means they are working independently without coordinating with other ministries and departments. Because of lack of coordination, it so happens that one government department is not aware about infrastructure project being planned or executed by another government department. So because of lack of coordination, it leads to unnecessary delays and cost overruns with respect to infrastructure projects. One of the best example with respect to delays and cost overruns has been highlighted by Prime Minister Modi himself. Let me just explain his example once again. He said that in India, you must have observed that a new road is constructed. Let's say the road might be constructed by PWD department. Once a road is constructed, the water supply department will realize that road has been constructed, but they forgot to lay down the underground pipelines. So what happens in this particular case is a newly constructed road is then dug out, water pipelines are laid down, and the road is reconstructed once again. Now, question is, why is this one happening in the first place? This is happening in the first place because the PWD department and the water supply department, they are not coordinating with one another. And when they don't coordinate with one another, obviously it will lead to delays and cost escalation in the projects. So, in order to provide for integrated planning and execution of infrastructure projects, we have launched Gati Shakti Master Plan. And let me tell you, Gati Shakti is not about financing of infrastructure projects. For financing, we already have NIP. Gati Shakti is more about promoting coordination among the ministries and departments. What we do under Gati Shakti is all the ministries and departments which are involved in creation of infrastructure, we bring them together on a single platform. And this single platform will provide for seamless flow of information across the ministries and departments so that one ministry and department is aware about the project being executed by another ministry and department. So that is what is Gati Shakti. So under Gati Shakti, we are going to monitor projects worth 100 lakh crores. And the projects that we are executing under Bharatmala, Sagarmala, Udan, they have been brought under Gati Shakti. One special thing about Gati Shakti is to provide for integrated design, planning, and execution of infrastructure projects. We are going to leverage geospatial technology, satellite technology. So by using satellite technology, we are preparing maps. We are aggregating all the information related to infrastructure projects. And in fact, we are also tracking the real-time planning and execution of infrastructure projects. And this technology as such is developed by Bhaskaracharya National Institute of Space Applications and Geoinformatics. The nodal department is Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade under Ministry of Commerce. And to have that coordination, we have set up a empowered group of secretaries headed by Cabinet Secretary. So, what is the latest news about Gati Shakti from the budget? Finance Minister has declared that whatever data that we are collecting under Gati Shakti related to infrastructure, let's say data related to important projects being executed or important maps, all of this data in a way was mostly confined to the government. In a way, it is not available to the private sector. So in this year's budget, the finance minister has declared that the data for Gati Shakti will be made available to the private sector as well. So that is what is the latest development. You can see this practice question number 4. Gati Shakti Master Plan seeks to mobilize money for financing infrastructure projects. That is not what is Gati Shakti, right? That is NIP. Private sector is allowed to access the data and maps from the Gati Shakti, yes, because of the recent budget announcement. And DPIIT is a nodal department, right? Answer is 2 and 3 only. Okay, now coming to the next scheme. The next scheme is quite important for your prelims. It is Scheme for Financial Assistance to the States for Capital Investment. What exactly is this scheme? Let's understand here. See, under this particular scheme, central government is giving 50-year interest-free loans to the states. It is giving loans for with a maturity period of 50 years, and states are not required to give any kind of interest on those loans. For what purpose are the loans given? Can you see? It is for capital investment. So states can avail these loans and states can utilize that particular loan for capital expenditure. This is the first thing. Second thing is this particular scheme has two components. That is what is important. You have first component and the second component. In the first component, we are providing untied loans to the states. What do you mean by untied loans? Untied loans means center is giving loans to the state government without any conditions attached. However, the only condition here is the money should be utilized for capital investment and not for revenue expenditure. That's the only condition. So in a way, the states have the necessary financial as well as operational autonomy to decide on which particular infrastructure project they would want to spend money for. So every state will spend money according to its own needs, requirements, as well as demands, right? But the question is, how much money will be given to the states, which is in the form of untied loans, right? So let's say we are giving total 1.5 lakh crore to the states, out of which untied loans is 1 lakh crore. Understand, 1 lakh crore is not for a single state. It is for all the states combined. So the question is, how is this 1 lakh crore loan distributed among all the states? As per the government guidelines, government has said that this 1 lakh crore shall be distributed among all the states based upon their percentage share of taxes, which they are getting based upon the recommendations of 15th Finance Commission. So whatever percentage the 15th Finance Commission has recommended should be given to states from the central divisible pool of taxes. That much percentage they will get from this 1 lakh crores. Example, let's say Maharashtra gets 5% of the central divisible pool of taxes based upon the recommendations of 15th Finance Commission. Accordingly, Maharashtra will get 5% of this 1 lakh crore. 5% of 1 lakh crore is 5,000 crores. Bihar might get 10% of central divisible pool of taxes based upon the recommendations of 15th Finance Commission. Accordingly, Bihar would get 10% of this 1 lakh crores. And that is the first component, untied loans. What is the second component? Second component is where once again we are giving loans, but the loans might be given for certain specific cause, for a specific reason. The government has come up with the purposes for which this particular loan can be availed for. For example, according to government guidelines, the loan can be utilized for constructing houses for police personnel. The loan can be utilized for construction of libraries which have broadband connection. So government has laid on certain conditions that the money should be utilized only for a specific purpose or a cause. That is the first component here. Second one, loans might also be given to certain states and not to all the states. And when loans are given to certain states, here it will be given to only those states which have carried out the necessary reforms in a particular sector. For example, government might say that if you bring about reforms in your urban local bodies, if you are improving the finances of your urban local bodies, I will give you some additional loans. Same way, government might say, if you improve the financial performance of your discoms, then I will give you some additional loans. So in this particular case, you must understand that not everyone will get the loans. Only those states will get the loans which carry out reforms in a specific sector. So in a way, you could consider this as a incentive, or I would say it is like a carrot that the central government is offering to states to bring about reforms in different sectors. So this is what is scheme for financial assistance to the states for capital investment. All the details I have highlighted here. The same thing is there. You could very well go through these details. You can see the nodal ministry here is Ministry of Finance. And in this year's budget, we have allocated 1.5 lakh crore under this particular scheme. So let's look at the practice question. Question number 5. Okay, this is a very interesting question. The states can borrow from outside India based upon the security of consolidated fund of state. With respect to borrowing powers of the central government, it is covered under Article 292. But borrowing powers of the states, it is covered under Article 293 of the Indian Constitution. Please read the Article 293 carefully. It says, executive power of the state extends to borrowing within the territory of India based upon the security of consolidated fund of state. To simplify this, it says that the states can borrow within India based upon the security of consolidated fund of state. In a way, Article 293 is silent with respect to whether the states can borrow from outside India or not. That is the most important thing that you should know. So, until 2017, state governments were not allowed to borrow from outside India until 2017. But in 2017, the central government came up with a new policy. In this new policy, the central government has said that state-owned entities, that is agencies owned by the state government, they can borrow money from outside India from multilateral agencies, from multilateral banks like World Bank. They can borrow money. But when they are borrowing money from outside India, the central government acts like a guarantor. It means if state-owned agencies fail to repay the loans, let's say to World Bank, central government is giving a guarantee that they will repay the loans to World Bank on behalf of the state-owned agencies. This policy was released in 2017. So this is a very confusing thing with respect to borrowings of the state from outside India. So let me just simplify this further. First point, if there's a statement in UPSC prelims, the statement says, under Article 293, states can borrow from outside India based upon the security of consolidated fund of state. The statement is incorrect. Second, if the statement is something like this, states can borrow money from outside India, is the statement correct? Because it does not say anything with respect to what is the security here, the statement would be correct. Third statement is states can borrow money from outside India based upon the security of the central government. The statement is still right. That is how you should be very careful when you are solving those kind of questions. So the states can borrow outside India based upon the security of consolidated fund of state. No, here the central government is acting like a guarantor. In 2017, the center allowed financially sound state government entities to borrow from multilateral agencies. It is right. So the right answer in this case is D. With respect to scheme for financial assistance to the states for capital investment, consider the following statements. The scheme provides for 50-year loans to the states at lower interest rate. It is interest free, right? All the loans are unconditional loans? No. Only some part of the loans is unconditional, remaining is conditional. So the right answer is neither one nor two. Let's move to the next one. Harmonized list of infrastructure. What is this list and why is it in news? Ministry of Finance publishes a list which is called as Harmonized List of Infrastructure. In this particular list, Ministry of Finance will notify some sectors as infrastructure sector. It gives the status of infrastructures to some sectors and sub-sectors. For example, right now, Ministry of Finance has assigned the status of infrastructure to 5 main sectors and 37 sub-sectors. You can see the list here. I can understand it's quite difficult to remember the list, but I'll tell you a simple trick. In a way, it includes all the physical and social infrastructure. Just remember this. Everything which is physical and social infrastructure in a way is included here. That's the best way to remember. There's other thing also which I'll say later. So once a particular sector is included in the harmonized list of infrastructure, such sectors get certain benefits. What benefits? For example, if a sector is included in the harmonized list of infrastructure, they can easily borrow money from banks, financial institutions, as well as development banks at a lower interest rates. So they get easy access to funding loans at a cheaper interest rate. That's the first benefit. Second benefit is they can easily borrow money from outside India through external commercial borrowings. It means, in a way, the compliance burden on these sectors and subsectors for ECBs is considerably lower as compared to a non-infrastructure sector. So it is a big advantage if a particular sector is included in the harmonized list of infrastructure. So you can just see here all the benefits and concessions that are given to harmonized list of infrastructure. In fact, they can have easier access to investment from sovereign wealth funds of other countries. So like I was saying, it is quite difficult to mug up all the sectors which are included in the harmonized list of infrastructure. The most easiest way is at least try to remember the important sectors and subsectors which have got added in the list in the recent times. And that is what UPSC might also focus upon, right? In the recent times, we have added data centers and energy storage in the budget of 22-23, exhibition cum convention centers, and then affordable rental housing. And now we have added a new thing to the harmonized list of infrastructure. The new thing that we have added here is shipping, large ships. It means now construction of large ships is also part of infrastructure sector now. Why? Right now, if you see, in India, we have somewhere around 1,500 shipping vessels which are operating in India. And India is somewhere ranked at 20th place in the global shipbuilding industry at a global level. But the biggest problem here is India's share in the global shipbuilding industry is a mere 0.06%. Its share in global shipbuilding industry is very, very less. Countries such as Japan, China, Singapore, they have developed a huge manufacturing base for shipbuilding. So, as far as India is concerned, we are in a way not truly Atmanirbhar when it comes to shipbuilding. So, in order to give a flip to shipbuilding and ensure Atmanirbharta in shipping industry, we have decided to include shipping as part of harmonized list of infrastructure. How the questions are likely to be asked in prelims? We can see with respect to harmonized list of infrastructure, the list includes both physical and social infrastructure. The first part of the statement is right. But if you look at the second part, it says notified by Ministry of Commerce and Industry. It is incorrect because it is notified by Ministry of Finance. The sectors included in the list can have easier access to external commercial borrowings, right? Data centers and energy storage systems are included in the list, which is the latest development. Right answer is 2 and 3 only. Which among the following are included in the harmonized list of infrastructure sector in India? Solid waste management is included. Affordable rental housing is included. Exhibition cum convention centers is included. And now large ships are included. Right answer is all. That is how questions are likely to be asked. Okay. So until now, what we have done is we have covered a basic overview of infrastructure, and we have also discussed the important policies and initiatives of the government related to infrastructure. Now I am going to discuss each of the infrastructure in news, like important projects in railways, important projects in roads, important projects in ports, and so on. So that is how questions are also asked as shown in the previous year prelims. So let's start with the railways. Remember, I have already showed you this particular question where you were required to identify as to which of these were greenfield airports. On similar lines, as far as railways is concerned, what we are doing is we are constructing railway stations. These railway stations may be constructed by government owned agencies, or railway stations may be constructed through PPP, public private partnership. These railway stations are going to be constructed under the scheme called as Amrit Bharat Railway Station Scheme. So you may get a question, just like previous year prelims, as to which of these railway stations have been developed recently under Amrit Bharat Station Scheme. Same way, you may get a question related to dedicated freight corridors, a question related to Mumbai Ahmedabad high speed rail project, which is one of the mega project that we are implementing, or a question related to operating ratio of the railways. Apart from that, with respect to railways, in mains 2022, there was a question wherein you were required to discuss the PPP model in the redevelopment of railway stations. Remember, we covered this, right? It is nothing but NMP, that is National Monetization Pipeline. On similar lines, with respect to railways, whatever I'm going to discuss, you should be in a position to write answer to these two mains question for practice. one question is, what are the reasons for decline in share of railways in the freight traffic, and what initiatives have been taken by railways to improve its share in the freight traffic? And second one is, what are dedicated freight corridors and what is their importance in improving logistics efficiency in India? So let's start with a brief overview about railways. Okay. Until few years back, in India, we used to have two budgets. One was general budget and the other one was railway budget. Whenever railway budget used to be presented, there was lot of focus on railway budget. And because there was a lot of focus on the railway budget, usually the railway minister who used to present the railway budget used to take this as an opportunity to launch a number of schemes for railways to basically cater to vote bank politics. So what we did later is we merged railway budget into the general budget. So there was this article in the Hindu newspaper which was which was written after the discussion of the budget. This article highlights that when railway budget used to be presented separately, there was a lot of emphasis on railway budget. But after its merger into general budget, problem is railways is not even finding a mention in the speech of finance minister, which shows that we have moved from one extreme to another extreme. One extreme where too much emphasis was given on railway budget, but now we have reached another extreme where the word railways is not even mentioned in the budget speech of the finance minister. So there are two extremes that we have moved to. So in budget, as such, there's nothing substantial with respect to railways. Same we can say about economic survey also. But if you go through the demand for grants presented by Ministry of Railways, this demand for grants has highlighted the problems and challenges faced by railways. In fact, it has also given some strategies to address these problems. So what we'll do, firstly, we'll quickly look at the present finances of railways, and then we'll discuss the challenges. So you can see here, what are the sources of revenue for railways? That is from where railways is getting the money. Railways is earning money through freight trains, through passenger trains, through sundry revenue. This revenue is basically the revenue which railways might be earning through catering services, food catering services, through running of parcel services, through advertisements. So that is the revenue which the railways is earning. Budgetary support, financial support given by the government in the budget. Extra budgetary resources means borrowing by government owned PSUs in the Ministry of Railways. That is extra budgetary resources. And you can see that out of all of these five, major revenue of the railways is coming through budgetary support, which is almost half, 47%. That's the first thing. So in a way, railways is too much dependent on the government's financial support. It is not able to generate revenues from its own sources, internal revenue. Second thing, between the revenue that is earning from freight trains and passenger trains, you can see the revenue that it is earning from freight trains is higher as compared to passenger trains. Let's discuss about this in detail. So, railways is operating two types of trains, that is passenger trains and goods trains. Now the problem here is, over a period of time, consecutive governments have deliberately kept passenger fares lower due to vote bank politics. Generally, it is the poor people who prefer traveling by trains, especially the general category, right? General compartment trains. So the passenger fares are deliberately kept lower because of vote bank politics. So because of that, railways is incurring huge amount of losses. So to compensate for the losses, which it is suffering because of low passenger fares, the railways has increased the fares for the goods train. This we call it as cross subsidization. Why are we calling it as cross subsidization? Because in a way, subsidies on passenger trains is provided by the goods train, right? So the fares for movement of goods from one place to another in India is quite higher. This has led to one of the biggest problem in railways. Think here, if you want to transport goods from place A to place B, you'd obviously compare the cost of transporting goods through railways and roadways. The problem is cost of transporting goods through railways is higher as compared to roadways. So what will you do? You will try to transport goods through roadways, right? So because of this, there has been decline in the share of railways in the overall freight traffic. How much is a decline? In 1951, railways accounted for 86% of the freight traffic. But in 21-22, it has got reduced to just 26%. So railways has been losing its share in the freight traffic because the freight rates are very high. Apart from that, if you look at the railway budget this year, the overall revenue of railways is somewhere around 3.02 lakh crore, but expenditure of railways is somewhere around 2.99 lakh crore, which means the surplus for railways is just around 3,000 crores. It's a one of the biggest problem that railways is facing. You must understand railways is enjoying monopoly, right, in running of freight trains. It is enjoying monopoly in running passenger trains. In spite of that, the amount of surplus which it is generating is quite lower, 3,000 crores. When the amount of surplus is quite low, obviously it does not has enough money to spend on capital expenditure. But someone has to fund this capital expenditure. Who's funding this? Government. So the government funding to railways is as high as 47%. Apart from that, there is another concept of operating ratio. If you see, operating ratio of railways is calculated as expenditure of the railways divided by revenues of the railways. This operating ratio right now is somewhere around 98%. What do you mean by operating ratio of 98%? You can just look at the the ratio. Expenditure divided by revenue into 100. In simple English, operating ratio of 98% means to earn 100 rupees, railways is spending 98. For every 100 rupees it is earning, it is spending 98. Thus, its overall profitability is quite less. If profitability is less, the dependence on government will obviously increase, right? So this is the biggest problem which is faced by railways. So all of this I have highlighted here. You can just go through these points. Whatever I have highlighted, this is about the railway budget. So let's look at this particular question. Discuss the reasons for the decline in the share of railways in the freight traffic. Enumerate the initiatives taken by the government to increase the share of railways in the freight traffic. Let's quickly look into these things. I told you why is railways losing its share in the freight traffic is because of cross subsidization. But why is cross subsidization taking place in the first? Why is it even taking place? It is taking place because of vote bank politics. Because the government is deliberately keeping the passenger fares lower, right? Because of vote bank politics. So there was a committee appointed by the government called as Rakesh Mohan Committee. This committee has suggested that we need to corporatize Indian railways. Corporatization of Indian railways means that railways should be managed by a board of directors headed by a CEO. The board of directors headed by CEO should fix the passenger fares. So there should not be any direct role of the government with respect to fixing passenger. That's the first thing. Second, as we discussed, the overall share of railways in the freight traffic has got reduced. So the railways has come up with national rail plan to increase its share in the freight traffic, which is right now around 26% to 45% by 2030. Next one is, like I said, railways is majorly earning revenue through running of goods trains. But the question is, which commodity it is transporting? It is being said that majority of the revenue railways is earning through transportation of coal from one place to another. So the major share of freight traffic which it is earning is from. Now there's a problem. You know, India has come up with net zero target, right? Apart from that, because of the growing threat of climate change, we are de-emphasizing the role of coal. So as the share of coal in our energy mix reduces, the revenue which the railways will earn from movement of coal will obviously reduce. So now railways is going to come under the threat of losing even the freight traffic also. So what should railways do? It is being said that it is not good to depend too much on earning revenue through transportation of coal. Railways has to diversify the basket of goods that it is transporting. To diversify the basket of goods that railways is transporting, in the last year budget, the finance minister has announced 3 economic corridors where Indian Railways will focus on transportation of energy, mineral, and cement. That's the first thing. Second, there are certain routes where there is high traffic. On such high traffic density routes, railways is going to introduce new goods trains. Third, railways is going to provide for rail Sagar corridor, which, as the name suggests, Sagar means we are going to provide for connectivity to the ports. That is rail Sagar corridor. The next problem is lower speed of freight trains due to heavy congestion. Why is there heavy congestion? Right now, we have laid on railway tracks. These railway tracks are right now used by both passenger trains also as well as goods trains also. And generally, what happens is we give more preference to movement of passenger trains over and above the movement of goods trains. So repeatedly, the goods trains would have to halt to give way for the passenger trains. That is why the overall speed of goods trains in India is quite less at somewhere around 30 km per hour. So to solve this particular problem, we have launched what is called as dedicated freight corridor. As the name suggests, dedicated freight corridor means separate tracks for the movement of goods trains. Next, lack of last mile connectivity, which is one of the problem as compared to roads. So to provide for last mile connectivity, we are focusing on multimodal terminals. What are these multimodal parks? I will be covering later. So these are the some of the reasons as to why railways is losing its share in the freight traffic, and these initiatives have been taken or should be taken. The other things which I think you should be able to go through, like share of private sector investment in railways is lower. So we are trying to develop Amrit Bharat railway stations. Please remember the name of these stations, which might become important for your prelims examination. Rani Kamlapati in Bhopal, Gandhinagar railway station, Vishveshwaraya terminal in Bangalore, Gomti Nagar railway station, Ayodhya, and Katak. So these are some of the railway stations that are developed through Amrit Bharat Station Scheme. So let's move to dedicated freight corridor. So with respect to dedicated freight corridor, I have already explained to you what are dedicated freight corridor. Why do we need dedicated freight corridor? All of these things I have already explained. As far as your prelims examination is concerned, you may get a question related to the dedicated freight corridor. What kind of questions? Like the place from where they originate and the place where they end. That's the first thing. Second, the states through which dedicated freight corridors pass. That's the second one. Or let's say between the western dedicated freight corridor and eastern dedicated freight corridor, which one is more longer? That is what you can expect. So let's look at the western dedicated freight corridor. The western dedicated freight corridor starts from a place called as Dadri in UP. From Dadri, it goes until Mumbai, DNPT. This is the western dedicated freight corridor. Just look at the states through which it is passing. It passes through UP, Haryana, Rajasthan, Gujarat, and finally Maharashtra. These are the states through which it passes. That is western dedicated freight corridor. Eastern dedicated freight corridor starts from a place called as Sahanewal, which is located near Ludhiana in Punjab. From Sahanewal in Punjab, it goes all the way to Dankuni in West Bengal. What you should know is when you look at the eastern dedicated freight corridor, this stretch of eastern dedicated freight corridor highlighted in green, it is built by Dedicated Freight Corridor Corporation of India Limited. This agency is building this stretch of eastern dedicated freight corridor. The last stretch of eastern dedicated freight corridor, this one, it is developed in PPP mode, public private partnership. That is why in some sources they do mention that eastern dedicated freight corridor is up to Sonnagar, which is actually incorrect, because until Sonnagar in Bihar, it is developed by Dedicated Freight Corporation of India Limited. Beyond this, it is still there, but it is under PPP mode. And you can just look at the states through which it is passing. Passes through Punjab, Haryana, UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, and then West Bengal. And can you see between the eastern and western dedicated freight corridor, the western dedicated freight corridor is much longer, because eastern dedicated freight corridor is much longer because it is up to Dankuni. So all the details I have highlighted here, you can just go through this. Funding is coming from government as well as borrowings from multilateral agencies such as World Bank. And there are some interesting things also about dedicated freight corridor. The question is, how are dedicated freight corridor able to, improve the logistics sector in India? In the dedicated freight corridor, we are constructing railway tracks. And these railway tracks are being constructed in such a manner that they are able to support rolling stock. Rolling stock means the wagons which are being moved through these tracks. So we are going to build railway tracks in such a manner that the wagons which can move on these railway tracks, they will be much more wider and much more longer in terms of height. So because the wagons are in a way wider as well as longer, we can say that they could carry more freight, more goods. That is the first thing. Second thing, normally if you look at the train length in India, it is like 700 meters. But the trains which are going to move across this dedicated freight corridor, their length is going to be somewhere around 1500 meters. So you can see higher height and width of rolling stock. I hope you understood rolling stock. It's a wagons which move on these railway tracks. Longer train length, higher train load, and the train speed is much higher at 100 km per hour, which otherwise, as I discussed, is just 30 km per hour. So that is the strength of dedicated freight corridor. So we are not just constructing a separate corridor, but ensuring that these corridors are also able to support rolling stock of higher width as well as higher height. By doing so, we can provide for faster and more efficient transportation of. The next one is with respect to Mumbai Ahmedabad high speed rail project. I would say it is one of the biggest mega project which India has launched. As per this particular project, we are going to build India's first bullet train project. And as you can see, this particular bullet train project was in news for two reasons. Reason number one is, initially we thought that the bullet trains which will be used in this particular project, we will import it from Japan. Later, we decided to build the bullet trains in India itself. And I would say it's a big fillip to Make in India campaign. That's the first news about this project. Second, as you can read in Indian Express, for the first time ever, for a bullet train, we are constructing undersea railway tunnel. So India's first undersea railway tunnel for a bullet train project is going to be constructed for this particular project, and that particular tunnel is near Mumbai. So these are the two biggest news which is with respect to high speed rail project. Let's look into some prince pointers about this bullet train project. As you can see, the bullet train project, the bullet train as such is set to operate from Sabarmati in Gujarat to Bandra Kurla complex in Mumbai. It is going to pass through two states and one union territory. Obviously, Gujarat and Maharashtra, two states, and then it is also going to pass through the union territory of Dadar and Nagar Haveli. Quite important for your prelims. The bullet train project is based upon a Japanese technology called as Shinkansen technology, which is in a way, focus on building of these sleek trains as well as tracks, which are able to support trains moving at very high speeds. It is called as Shinkansen technology. We are going to build this bullet train, which has a operational speed of somewhere like 320 kilometer per hour, which is in a way drastically going to reduce the travel time between Mumbai and Ahmedabad, right? So that is one of the biggest thing. Now, as far as who is funding the project, let's see the details. So all these business pointers you can look at here. So the total cost of the project is somewhere around 1 lakh crore, which includes the loan assistance from Japan. Some amount of money is provided by Japan as a financial assistance. It is implemented by National High Speed Rail Corporation Limited, which is owned by the center, where central government has contributed 50%, and Maharashtra and Gujarat, where each of these two states have contributed 25%. So it's a joint collaboration between center, Maharashtra, and Gujarat, when center has provided for 50% of the project cost. So once this bullet train is built, the bullet train project, we have other projects which are lined up. You can see Mumbai, Nagpur, Delhi, Varanasi, Delhi, Ahmedabad, and so on. So because this project is in news, you may get a questions. Next is, let's quickly look at some important railway projects in the last 2 years. Look at this railway project. India's first underwater metro has been launched in Kolkata. This underwater metro project is across river Hooghly. So this is one important thing. Second is we have constructed world's highest arch rail bridge in Jammu and Kashmir. And this arch rail bridge, which is world's highest, it is constructed across the Chenab River in J&K. Third one is India is now carrying out trial run of hydrogen powered trains. So we could power the trains through diesel, we could power the trains through electricity. Now India is doing a trial run of hydrogen powered trains. Why it is important is because there are only few countries which have developed this technology of hydrogen fueled trains. These countries are Germany, France, China, and Sweden. And this particular train has been developed by Research, Design, and Standard Organization based in Lucknow. Last one, India's longest rail tunnel has been built in Jammu and Kashmir. It is called as Pir Panjal Tunnel or Banihal Kazikund Railway Tunnel. So these are some important railway projects which have been launched in the last 2 years. Let's now take up the practice questions. We can see this question. In the recent past, which of the above have been developed under Amrit Bharat station scheme? Under Amrit Bharat, Rani Kamlapati, Ayodhya, and Katak. All of these three. The right answer is 1, 2, and 3. With respect to dedicated freight corridor, the eastern dedicated freight corridor is longer than the western dedicated freight corridor. It is right. Both the eastern and western pass through state of Madhya Pradesh. No, they're not passing through Madhya Pradesh. The dedicated freight corridors are designed to support rolling stock with higher width and height. Yes, it is right. Answer is 1 and 3 only. With reference to Mumbai-Ahmedabad high-speed rail project, the project passes through 2 states and 1 union territory. The project is entirely financed. It's not entirely financed with the financial assistance of Japan. The project includes India's first undersea railway tunnel for bullet train, right? So answer is 1 and 3 only. Consider the following statements related to operating ratio of the Indian Railways. Remember I told you operating ratio is calculated as total expenses divided by the revenue of the railways. Operating ratio is ratio of receipts to working expenses, which is incorrect. Rather, it is a ratio of working expenses to the receipts. Lower operating ratio denotes higher profitability and availability of resources. Ideally, the operating ratio should be lower. If it is higher, it means you are spending more, right? So ideally, this should be lower. The operating ratio of railways has steadily declined. Unfortunately, it is not steadily declined. In a way, it has remained stagnant. So the right answer is 2 only. Let's move to the next topic of roads. So we are done with the railways. Now we're getting into the roads sector. With respect to roads, even though not directly related to roads, but almost a similar question, which was asked in prelims 2016, India's first investment and manufacturing zone was proposed to be set up. The answer was Andhra Pradesh. So based upon that, you may get a question such as, which among the following are developed as greenfield industrial cities as part of industrial corridor development program? Or you could get the questions in the form of match the following. So let's get into the topic of road sector, where we'll focus on important road projects in India, which might be asked in your prelims. You can see the important stats about the roads. India has the second largest road network with a total road length of 60 lakh kilometer. Roads account for 60 percentage of the free traffic and 87 percentage of the passenger traffic. So one of the biggest project in the road sector is National Industrial Corridor Development Program. What is this program? Why do we even need such a program? Let's understand that. With respect to manufacturing sector, I would say there are two biggest problems for manufacturing sector. The first problem is, if I want to set up a manufacturing plant, I have to acquire land, I have to take the necessary approvals from the government, and I have to build the necessary infrastructure right from scratch, which obviously is very time consuming. For example, you know how costly and cumbersome land acquisition is, how difficult it is to get land environmental clearances in India, and to set up basic infrastructure like to get a electricity connection, water connection, to get road connectivity. It takes, it takes a lot of time. That is problem number one. Problem number two, in spite of taking care of all of this, let's say I finally build a industry. Once the industry is built, the problem is this particular industry might have lack of connectivity through roads. And when we do not have proper connectivity to roads, what happens is the logistic cost will increase. The logistic cost increase, the cost of raw materials will increase, the cost of exporting goods to other countries will increase. Ultimately, it will drag our manufacturing sector. So, to solve both these problems, which I have highlighted, we have launched National Industrial Corridor Development Program. What happens in this particular program? To solve the first problem, what will the government do? Government has identified certain cities, and these cities are going to be developed as greenfield smart industrial cities. What is going to happen in these greenfield smart industrial cities is, government will identify the land where manufacturing sector can be developed. So it might be a contiguous 100 acres of land. Government will acquire that particular land in that particular city. Government will take all the necessary approvals, will give the necessary approvals. Government will build the basic infrastructure. Like government will set up buildings, it will provide for electricity connection, it will provide for water connection. Whatever you need to start your industry, that is already ready. It is readied by the government. This particular contiguous area, which is including land as well as basic infrastructure like building, water connection, electricity connection, everything is ready. Private sector can simply move in and start manufacturing. Private sector need not acquire land. Private sector need not take environmental clearances. Private sector already has a ready-made infrastructure ready. This model, we call it as plug and play model. Look at the word plug and play. Private sector need not do anything, just come in, install the machineries and start manufacturing. This is plug and play model. So we are going to develop greenfield smart industrial cities. Second problem, we are ensuring that all the major cities of India are well connected by roads so that the logistic cost, the cost of moving goods reduces. So under this particular program, National Industrial Corridor Development Program, we are building 11 industrial corridors, which are going to be connected through network of roads. And not just these corridors, we are going to develop greenfield smart industrial cities. This is what is important for your prelims examination. It includes Dholera in Gujarat, Chendra Bidkin, which is located in Aurangabad in Maharashtra, Greater Noida in Uttar Pradesh, Vikram Udyogapuri near Ujjain in Madhya Pradesh. These are the new greenfield smart industrial cities. This particular project is implemented by National Industrial Corridor Development and Implementation Trust, which comes under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. This is one big initiative. Second one is with respect to multimodal logistic park. So what do you mean by multimodal logistic park? Let's understand that. But before that, a brief background. When we say logistics sector includes transportation, storage, warehousing, packaging, labeling, as well as real-time tracking of the goods. All of this constitutes the logistic sector in a country. It is not just transportation. In India, the logistic cost is quite higher at 12 to 14% of GDP as compared to, let's say, 8 to 10% in advanced countries. Some of you might look at a data provided by some particular NGO which says that some think tank which says that the logistic cost in India has come down to 8 to 10% of GDP. I'm going strictly according to official data published by the government in the National Logistic Policy, which says 12 to 14%, right? So logistic cost is higher. The question is, why is logistic cost higher? So you can see unfavorable modal mix where majority of the goods are moved through roads as compared to railways. That's the first problem. Second problem is, even when we are moving goods through roads, we are moving the goods through smaller and inefficient trucks. Obviously, when most of the goods are moved through roads, there will be heavy congestion on the national highways. And the biggest problem here is whenever we move goods from in India, we are mostly moving goods through point to point, where we do not provide for aggregation or disaggregation of the goods. What is this aggregation and disaggregation? Let's see this. Right now, the current situation is when goods are being moved, they're moved from point A to point B directly through smaller and inefficient trucks. Trucks are smaller. Because they're smaller, they're not capable to carry large amount of goods simultaneously. They are inefficient. They are consume more fuel. So obviously transportation cost will be higher. So multimodal logistic park will move from point to point freight movement to hub and spoke model. What is this hub and spoke model? Let's understand. To an example. Let's say we would want to move goods from Thane near Mumbai to Noida in Delhi, near Delhi. Right now, how are the goods moved from Thane to Noida? Through smaller and inefficient trucks, which is in a way leading to increase in logistic cost. Now we should shift to hub and spoke model. What happens in hub and spoke model? Initially, goods from nearby Mumbai, like Mumbai suburbs, Thane, JNPT, they will be carried through smaller trucks through to a logistic park, multimodal logistic park. And ideally, this multimodal logistic park is outside the city limits. The idea is to avoid heavy congestion within the city. Idea is to reduce the pollution in the city. Trucks will carry goods to the multimodal logistic park and it is transported through smaller trucks. And here the aggregation will take place. All the goods which are to be transported to Delhi, they will be aggregated. After the aggregation, from Mumbai to Delhi, the goods may be transported through larger trucks, they may be transported through rail, and they may be transported through inland waterways as well. So these logistic park will provide for multimodal connectivity. And once it reaches Delhi, in Delhi, outside the city limits of Delhi, you'll have another multimodal logistic park. And that multimodal logistic park will provide for transport of goods through smaller trucks to the areas surrounding Delhi. You can see logistic parks will enable aggregation of freight, which is taking place here, and disaggregation of freight, which is taking place here. It will provide for multimodal freight movement. What kind of services they will provide for? It is not just providing for transportation, it will also provide for storage and warehousing. And if needed, if goods are if goods are exported to other countries, it also provides for customs clearance. That is what is multimodal logistic park. You can just see the list of multimodal logistic parks in India. We have this Jogi Gopa, which is located in Assam. The most important thing about this multimodal logistic park is it is India's first international multimodal park because it will provide for transportation of goods even to neighboring country of Bangladesh. That is the most important prelims pointer about multimodal logistic park. And you can see as to how the question can be asked. What are multimodal logistic parks? Discuss the importance of multimodal logistic parks in improving logistic efficiency and bringing down logistic cost in India. Okay, now let's take up the question here. Which among the following are developed as greenfield industrial cities as part of National Industrial Corridor Development Program? Greenfield. So here you can see Dholera, Greater Noida. As far as Indore is concerned, it is not a greenfield industrial city. So answer is 1 and 2 only. This question, Dholera is a greenfield smart industrial city. Jogi Gopa, it is India's multimodal logistic park, which is first international multimodal logistic park. Kolkata does not has this, right? Kolkata was in news recently. I told you India's first underwater metro has been constructed in Kolkata. So right answer in this particular case is one only. So having completed the sector of roads as well as railways, now let's move to the next sector, that is ports and shipping. With respect to port sector, as you can see in prelims 2023, we had a question with respect to match the following related to the ports in India. So let's understand the different prelims pointers related to ports. Right now in India, we have 13 major ports and around 200 minor ports. So with respect to major ports, what we have in India is we have an act. This act is called as Indian Ports Act 1908. Under this particular act, the central government is empowered to declare any port as a major port. So through a gazette notification, the central government can declare any port as a major port. And once a port is declared as major port, it comes under the administrative control of the central government. All other ports, by default, they will be non-major port or minor ports, and they will come under the control of the respective state government. So, as you can see, the importance of port sector is that they account for 95% of India's trade in terms of volume and 68% of India's trade in terms of value. So you can see some of the major ports that we have in India. Deen Dayal Port, called as Kandla Port, Mumbai Port, JNPT, Mormugao, New Mangalore, Cochin, Tuticorin, Chennai, Kamarajar Port, Vishakhapatnam, Paradeep, and Shyam Prasad Mukherjee Port, which is Calcutta and Haldia. These are the 12 ports which you can see. Now, recently, we have declared India's 13th major port, which is Galathea Bay in Great Nicobar. It is now declared as India's 13th major port. Apart from that, let's look at some other developments related to ports. Vizhinjam Port, which is located in Kerala, it is going to be India's first deep water container transshipment port. So what do you mean by transshipment? If you look at all these 12 ports on your screen, you must understand the overall depth of water in and around these ports, major ports, is quite lower, which we generally call it as draft. So because the depth is lower, these ports cannot accommodate larger shipping vessels. That's the biggest problem. On the other hand, the port that we are developing in Kerala, it is a deep water port. Because it's a deep water port, it has the capacity to accommodate larger shipping vessels. That's the first importance. Second importance is it is a transshipment port. Transshipment port means in this particular port, you would have smaller shipping vessels coming from across India. All the smaller shipping vessels, they will carry their cargo from different places like let's say Mumbai, JNPT, Mangalore, and so on. The cargo will be moved through smaller shipping vessels through this particular port based in Kerala. In this particular port, the cargo will be shifted from smaller shipping vessels to larger shipping vessels. And by shifting to larger shipping vessels, then the cargo is moved to other countries. So that way, the cargo is moved through larger and more efficient shipping vessels. So that way the logistic cost in India is likely to reduce because of this deep water transshipment port. This port is not a major port because it is developed by state of Kerala in PPP with the Adani group. Then we have another port called as Vadwan port, which is going to be developed in Maharashtra. It is to be built by Jawaharlal Nehru Port Trust and Maharashtra Maritime Board. It is going to be developed as landlord port. What is this landlord port? We'll discuss in the next part. Don't worry about it. Then we have Kamrajar port here. In fact, this was a question which was asked in prelims 2023 as well. What is the most unique thing about this particular port based in Tamil Nadu? All the major ports except this port, all the major ports in India, they are registered as trust under the Trust Act. But Kamrajar port is registered as companies under the Companies Act. So because it is registered as companies under the Companies Act, it is considered to be the first major port in India, which is considered to be a corporate port. Corporate port means it is not private owned port. It is owned by the government. But still, it is a corporate port because it is registered as a company. So that is about the Kamrajar port. Paradeep port is has now overtaken Deen Dayal Kandla port to become India's largest cargo handling port in the year 2023-24. Mangalore port is 100% solar powered port. We are going to develop Tuticorin port also, which is going to be a transshipment hub on the east coast. Then this port, Kolkata Haldia port, Shyam Prakash Mukherjee port, it is India's only riverine major port. It means it's the only major port in India which is located on a river, which is Hooghly River. Jawaharlal Nehru port is India's first 100% landlord port. So the word landlord port is quite important for your prelims examination. So what exactly is this landlord port? So you can see this is from PIB, which highlights that Jawaharlal Nehru port has become India's first 100% landlord major port of India. And this is a proposal by the government where it is aiming for at least 80% landlord model at major ports by 2030. So in your prelims, you may get a question about what exactly is landlord port. Let's understand this. See, broadly, with respect to ownership and management of ports in India, there are two models which are followed. One model is service port model and the other model is landlord port model. So we can say in a way we are shifting from service port model to landlord port model. One of the biggest difference between these two models is in a service port model, the role of private sector is quite limited. But in a landlord port model, the role of private sector is quite important. In what way? Let's understand this. If you focus on service port model, you must understand that each and every major port, it is managed by a port authority. So that particular port authority, in case of service port model, it will own the port as well as the land. So the entire port infrastructure as well as land in the port is owned by the port authority. Apart from that, port authority will also carry out other port operations. Other port operations like it will be involved in handling of cargo, it will be involved in storage and warehousing of cargo, and also provide for navigation to the shipping vessels. So you could say that in service port model, the port authority is owning the assets, plus it is also managing the port operations. So there is no role as such to the private sector. So when the port authority manages the port operations like handling of cargo, storage, warehousing, and so on, the port authority will earn revenue. The problem in service port model, as you may have identified, because private sector is not involved, there's more burden on the port authority because it is taking care of all the operations in the ports. So think of it, if government is directly you know, taking care of the port operations, the burden of the government will substantially increase. So to reduce the burden on the port and to better manage the port operations, to increase the efficiency, we have come up with landlord port model. In a landlord port model, the land and the assets of the port will continue to be with the port authority only. We are not selling it off to the private sector. The port assets and the land will continue to remain with the port authority. The role of the port authority will be to regulate the port activities. So here the port authority will ask the private sector to take care of port operations like handling of cargo, warehousing, navigation. So what is common to both this model is ownership is there with the port authority. But what's the major difference? In case of service port, port authority is managing the port operations, but in landlord port, private sector is managing the port operations. So private sector will manage the port operation, how much revenue the private sector should collect from the shipping vessels to manage the port operation, that is fixed by the port authority. So private sector will collect the revenue and some percentage of revenue it will share it with the port authority. That is what is landlord port model. So JNPT has become 100% landlord major port of India. So you can see this particular prelims question. Government has highlighted the need to move from service port model to landlord port model for higher efficiency of major ports. Which among the following best explains the landlord port model? Is it privatization? No. Is it leasing of entire port? No. Is it government retaining ownership of the ports along with management? No. It's about government retaining the ownership of ports while the terminal operations, that is operation management of the ports, it is leased to the private sector. That is what is the landlord port model. Now coming to shipbuilding industry, because it was a major focus of this year's budget. Let's see what is the present status of the shipbuilding industry. So we have developed a large number of shipyards in India, like some of the major shipyards. If you see, we have Cochin shipyard, Mazgaon dockyard. These are the major shipbuilding yards in India. Over a period of time, we have focused on building ships such that we have right now somewhere around 1500 shipping vessels in India. But and India is ranked at somewhere like 20th place in the global shipbuilding industry. But let me tell you the biggest problem which is in the shipbuilding. See, we are transporting cargo like for import and export through ships. The problem is 92% of India's cargo is carried by foreign flagged vessels. What do you mean by foreign flagged vessels? Generally, what happens is in whichever country the shipping company is registered, it will carry the flag of that country on that particular vessel. Like if a shipping company is registered in Singapore, it will carry the flag of Singapore on that particular ship. So 92% of India's cargo is carried through foreign shipping vessels and just 8% is transported through Indian flagged vessels. It is being said that if majority of the cargo is transported through foreign flagged vessels, we would have to pay for transportation fee, that is shipping cost to the foreign flagged vessels, right? And you must understand in the context of BOP, balance of payment, which we have discussed in the external sector, it amounts to import of transportation services, that is shipping transportation. So it is leading to huge outflow of dollars because we are spending huge amount of money to pay foreign flagged vessels for movement of cargo. Apart from that, India's share in the global shipbuilding industry is just 0.06%. Countries across the world like Singapore, China, Japan, they have built a huge manufacturing base when it comes to shipbuilding, which India clearly lacks. So, if we have ensured Atmanirbharta in mobile phones, if we have ensured Make in India success for solar panel cells, don't you think we should ensure the success of Make in India for shipbuilding as well? That will help us reduce our dependence on foreign flagged vessels. That is why this year's budget has focused on shipbuilding industry. There's one initiative of the government called as Shipbuilding Financial Assistance Policy, under which we are providing for financial assistance to shipyards to build shipping fleet in India. This initiative is already there. In this year's budget, number one, we have included construction of large ships in the harmonized list of infrastructure, which I have already explained before. Second, and very interesting, I would say, is we are going to issue credit notes for ship breaking in the Indian yards to promote circular economy. What is this credit note? Let's understand in detail. India is considered to be a country which is quite famous for ship breaking industry. Like we have a place called as Alang. This is considered to be one of the India's, in fact, one of the world's largest ship breaking yard. So what we are doing in this credit note is, let's say I own a ship. This ship might be quite old. What I can do, I can give my ship in this ship breaking yard so that the ship can be broken down and recycled. Let's say the cost of the ship, the old ship, which I'm giving for breaking, is equal to 1 crore. Government will give me a incentive for breaking this particular ship, and this incentive, for example, let's say it is equal to 20% of the value of the old ship. Old ship value is 1 crore. 20% of 1 crore is 20 lakh. But this 20 lakh, I'm not going to get it in the form of cash. This 20 lakh, I'm going to get it in the form of a credit note. It's like a paper. Now, what can I do with this paper worth 20 lakh? Government has said, if you decide to purchase a ship, a new ship, let's say I decide to purchase a new ship from a shipbuilding yard, let's say Cochin or Mazgaon dockyard. So let's say the cost of the ship, new ship, in this particular case is equal to 5 crore. Here, I need not pay entire 5 crore from my pocket. I can pay 20 lakh in the form of credit note. So out of this 5 crore, 20 lakh I will pay in the form of credit note, which is issued by the government, and from my pocket I will pay the remaining money. So this is what is credit note. What's the benefit of this credit note? Don't you think it will incentivize the shipping companies to recycle their ship? It will encourage the shipping companies to dismantle or break their old shipping fleet and then purchase the new ships. In a way, it is promoting circular economy, right? And at the same time, it is encouraging the shipping companies to purchase new ships, thus giving a fillip to shipbuilding industry. I would say it's a win-win situation, right? So you're breaking down the old ships and you're purchasing new ships. So shipbuilding industry will be promoted and shipbreaking industry will also be promoted. So that is one of the biggest initiative which was announced in this year's budget. We have also decided to come out with a new fund called as Maritime Development Fund with a corpus of 25,000 crores. 49% of this corpus will be provided by the government and the remaining corpus will be mobilized from the ports and the private sector. This corpus of 25,000 crores, we will provide it to the private companies, that is private shipping companies. This corpus may be given in the form of debt, that is loans, or to acquire stakes in the shipping companies, equity. So by infusing more capital into shipping companies, we can encourage them to acquire new ships. That is what is the new proposal. So let's look at this question. What do you mean by flagging of vessels in India? So I told you flagging means that you have a shipping company registered in a country. In whichever country it is registered, the shipping vessel will carry the flag of that particular country. So think of it, flagging of vessels in India. Flagging of vessels in India means providing for registration of ships in India, followed by these ships flying Indian flag. What's the benefit? We will reduce the share of foreign flagged vessels and increase the share of Indian flagged vessels. With reference to cabotage rules. Now, what do you mean by cabotage rules? Okay. When it comes to shipping, right, you could say there are two types of shipping where you are moving goods from India to another country. In this particular case, the two ports that I'm talking about, they are in two different countries. But there is another form of shipping where goods might be moved between two ports and these two ports are located in the same country. Let's say you move goods from JNPT to, let's say, Mangalore port. Both the ports are in India only, na? And this kind of shipping, we call it as coastal shipping. So the movement of goods from one port to another port located in the same country, this we call it as cabotage. So with respect to cabotage here, you can see it refers to movement of goods between the two ports in the same country. It is right. Both Indian flagged vessels and foreign flagged vessels are presently allowed to involve in cabotage operations. Yes, this is right. We allow even the foreign flagged vessels also in coastal shipping. Right answer is both 19. Now coming to the energy sector. So with respect to energy sector, I have already shown you the question. It was asked in prelims 2022. This question was with respect to recent developments in the renewable energy sector, right? So based upon that, you have these two prelims questions, which in a way test your knowledge with respect to recent development in the energy sector. So let's quickly have a look at the present energy sector in India. So this is the biggest development from the as highlighted in PIB, where India's renewable energy capacity has hit a new milestone. What is this milestone? India's renewable energy capacity has crossed 2 lakh megawatt. This is a new milestone that we have hit recently. That is why it becomes important. So accordingly, you should know what is the share of renewable energy in our total installed capacity. What is India's ranking at a global level with respect to renewable energy. Within India, which are the largest producers of renewable energy, solar energy, wind energy, and some mega renewable energy projects. Let's understand these things. Total installed power capacity in India is 4.6 lakh megawatt. The data here is as per Jan 2025. This is the latest data that we have. This is the installed capacity. With respect to our energy mix, that is sources of different energy in the total installed capacity, you can see thermal right now accounts for more than half of our installed capacity, which is 52%. If you see renewable energy, which is in this case including solar, wind, small hydropower projects, biopower, if you add these, it is around 35%. But around 3 to 4 years back, the government has declared that even the large hydropower projects will also be considered as renewable energy. So if you add large hydropower, the total share of renewable energy in the installed capacity would be 35 plus 11, which is 46%. I hope you know India's NDC targets, nationally determined contribution, India's Panchamrit goals. India has set a target that 50% of installed capacity should be from non-fossil fuels. Right now, if you see non-fossil fuels, you could include renewable energy, including large hydropower, which is 46, and in fact, even the nuclear power also. So 46 plus 2 is 48%. So target is 50%. We have already achieved 48% of it. So just 2% is the remaining share which is yet to be achieved. Apart from that, if you see India's ranking at a global level in terms of renewable energy capacity, India is presently placed at 4th place in terms of renewable energy capacity, 4th in terms of wind energy, and 5th in terms of solar energy. And if you compare solar and wind, you can very well see here the share of solar is more than the wind. So if you could arrange them in terms of descending order, you could say solar followed by hydropower followed by wind. That is the order. So you can see all the prelims pointers I have highlighted here. You can just go through this. But let's see the top states in terms of installed capacity. If you see the overall renewable energy, which includes solar, wind, and everything else, in terms of total renewable energy, it is Rajasthan followed by Gujarat. But if you see solar power alone, in terms of solar power, it is Rajasthan. In terms of wind, it is Gujarat. This is the data as of 1st March 2025. In some of the data which you must be seeing there with respect to wind, Tamil Nadu must be mentioned. So please don't go by that old data. This is a new data where Gujarat is first followed by Tamil Nadu. Next, some important renewable energy projects I have highlighted, like this Khavda Park in Gujarat. It is going to be the world's largest renewable energy park. This is the world's largest renewable energy park in terms of size. That is why it is quite important for your prelims examination. Omkareshwar floating solar park. It is going to be India's largest floating solar park, which is located in the state of Madhya Pradesh. Badla Solar Park is India's largest solar park in Tamil Nadu. And in India, there are two very big wind parks. One is in Tamil Nadu called as Muppandal, and the other one, as you can see, is in Jaisalmer, located in Rajasthan. These are the two big wind parks. So these are the important renewable energy projects in the recent days. Okay, now coming to another important announcement, budget announcement. Another major budget announcement this year is with respect to nuclear energy. Let me just give you the background with respect to nuclear energy. Right now, if you see the share of nuclear power in the total installed capacity, it is approximately 2%. The total installed nuclear power capacity is somewhere around 10,000 megawatt. It is being said that we have to achieve a nuclear energy generation of at least 1 lakh megawatt to have net zero carbon emissions. Right now it is somewhere like 10,000. From 10,000 we need to achieve 1 lakh megawatt. So we have to give a big thrust to nuclear energy in order to reduce our dependence on the fossil fuels and shift towards a much cleaner energy. Accordingly, in this year's budget, I hope you must have heard of it, Finance Minister has launched Nuclear Energy Mission. Apart from nuclear energy mission, the Finance Minister has highlighted that we are going to focus on two types of nuclear reactors. One is called as Bharat small nuclear reactors, and the second one is Bharat small modular reactors. People think that Bharat small reactors and Bharat small modular reactors are one and same. They are not same. They are different. They are different in terms of their technology. They are different in terms of how we are going to construct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a deep dive into nuclear energy and discuss all the important budget announcements. What kind of questions can be asked? As you can see, in prelims 2023, there was a question which is with respect to uranium deposits. So based upon that, you have this question about Bharat's small modular reactors. And this is another question about the present status of involvement of private sector in nuclear power generation. And if you look at this particular map, I have highlighted what are the different nuclear power plants that we have in India, which are right now under operation. These are some details. Keeping this in mind, I'm going to discuss first as to what are Bharat small reactors. Please know, I'm not discussing Bharat small modular reactors. I'm discussing Bharat small reactors. What are these Bharat small reactors? See, right now, we already have existing nuclear power plants in India. In the you must have studied in science and tech that we are following a three-stage nuclear energy program. In the three-stage nuclear energy program, in the first stage, we are focusing on natural uranium as a fuel. Natural uranium is a fuel used in the first stage of cycle. And the first stage of nuclear energy program, the nuclear power plants that we are using is called as pressurized heavy water reactor. In case if you have not revised those science and tech part, please revise that thoroughly so that you are able to answer the questions even related to science and technology. The first part, that is the first cycle, is we are using pressurized heavy water reactor. Right now, the nuclear reactors that we have in India, which are called as pressurized heavy water reactor, they have a electricity capacity of somewhere around 700 megawatt. That is the electricity capacity, which means that these nuclear power plants, I can say they are big, they are large nuclear power plants. So these nuclear power plants, they are set up at one particular place, and the energy or electricity is generated, and that particular electricity is then supplied across India. That is how the present nuclear power plants are operating. So what are Bharat small reactors? Look at the word small. You must understand Bharat small reactors are just like the conventional pressurized heavy water reactors that we are already using in India, except the fact that these reactors are going to be small sized. So, with respect to their energy production, they can be considered to be a miniature version of the conventional nuclear reactors. This is the most important point. Second, where are we going to establish this Bharat's small reactors? This is very interesting. Right now, we have number of industries for which they need huge electricity requirement. Example being, let's say you have iron and steel industries. Their electricity requirement is very huge. So what these iron and steel industries do is they set up their own thermal power plants, which are coal fired. They have their own thermal power plants. They generate electricity for their own purpose and they use that electricity. We call this as captive consumption of electricity. Why captive consumption? Because they generate electricity by thermal power plants, and that electricity they are using it for their own consumption, like iron and steel industries. Now, what is the proposal under Bharat Small Reactor? This is very interesting. Under Bharat Small Reactor, we are saying that industries can set up their own small reactors. So, iron and steel industry, which is so far relying on a thermal power plant, coal-fired thermal power plant, can do away with the coal-fired thermal power plant and then set up its own small nuclear reactor, which is based upon the existing technology. So the iron and steel industry will set up its own nuclear power plant, which we call it as Bharat Small Reactor. But what you must understand here is the industries, once they set up the Bharat small reactors, right? They cannot operate the reactors. They cannot operate or manage the nuclear reactors. Their role is confined to only setting up of a small nuclear reactor. Once the reactor is set up, they have to transfer the management to another entity. Which entity? Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited. We could say that in a way, Bharat small reactors are going to be established in PPP mode, public-private partnership, where the role of private sector is to build nuclear power plants to generate electricity for their self-consumption, and the role of NPCIL would be to manage the nuclear power plants. Most of the electricity they will use it for themselves, captive consumption. But if they have some surplus electricity, they could very well sell it in the market. This is one of the major departure from what is the existing policy that we have in India. Because under the existing policy, nuclear power plants can be established only by NPCIL. But now, private sector will establish nuclear power plants. That is a major departure under Bharat small reactors. So please read about the Bharat small reactors. I've discussed what are they, what are their technical specifications, how are they going to be constructed, PPP model, how will this PPP model work? Can the private sector manage nuclear power plants? Not at all. Can the private sector sell electricity, surplus electricity in the market? Yes. What's the benefit here? The benefit is it will enable the captive users, such as iron and steel industries, to depend on small reactors for their electricity needs, thus reducing their dependence on coal-fired thermal power plants. This is what are Bharat small reactors. What are Bharat small modular reactors? I'll tell you one thing which is common to Bharat small reactors and Bharat small modular reactors. You would say that both are a miniature version of nuclear power plants because they generate less amount of electricity as compared to conventional nuclear power plants. And that is where the commonality ends because there are a lot of differences between the two here. What are the differences? Let's understand. We can see number one, small, which is common to both. They generate electricity of up to 30 to 300 megawatt. The second and most important thing about these reactors is they are going to be modular reactor. Look at this word modular. Modular means, you know, what we are going to do in this modular reactors is we are going to build modules in the factories. And these modules are going to be transported to the point that is where the nuclear power plant is going to build, and that particular point will just assemble these modules. So everything is built in the factories itself. The modules are built in the factories, and the only the assembly is done at the plant site. But in case of Bharat small reactors, you are building the plants right from scratch. There are no modules as such. In this case, everything is done in the factories, only the assembly is done at the factory site, at the place where the power plant is set. Reactors, they are conventional reactors, which is on the base existing pressurized heavy water reactor. But small modular reactors, they are advanced reactor because they are advanced in terms of the kind of coolants that they use. There we might use heavy water as a coolant. Here we might use light water, liquid metal, etc. as a coolant. So you can see how are they different. Bharat's small reactors are constructed on the site. Bharat's small modular reactors are not constructed, but they are rather assembled on the site. Government's plan is to develop at least 5 small modular reactors by 2033 so that the overall nuclear energy capacity increases to 100 gigawatt by 2047. Look at some of the benefits of small modular reactors. You could say it is economical because they have lower capital needed. They can be easily scaled. Easily scaled means you can increase the capacity of an existing nuclear power plant by adding new modules. And they can be installed on a remote location where you do not have the grid connectivity. Environmental benefit is they have less nuclear wastage as compared to conventional nuclear reactors. Safety, as compared to conventional nuclear reactors, they are using less radioactive material. They use passive cooling system like air circulation. Generally what happens is in case of conventional nuclear reactors, we need coolant, and the coolant that we use is like heavy water and so on. Sometimes if the cooling mechanism in the nuclear reactors fail, in that case it will lead to nuclear meltdown if there's a failure in the cooling mechanism. In fact, that is what happened in Fukushima nuclear accident in Japan. With respect to Bharat small modular reactors, it is being said that they are generally focusing on passive air cooling system, which means they don't need active intervention in terms of cooling. They get cooled automatically. So that way the danger of nuclear meltdown in case of small modular reactors is considerably less. Apart from these two, the finance minister has also decided to launch or amend the Atomic Energy Act. Why is the amendment necessary? Let's understand this thing here. Right now, the Atomic Energy Act says that only the government can produce atomic energy. And to produce the atomic energy, government can do so through a company in which government should have at least 51% ownership. At least 51. It means it should be a government owned company. So right now we have NPCIL, Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited, which has the monopoly in setting up and running nuclear power plants in India. So all the nuclear power plants are owned and operated by NPCIL. Private sector as of now cannot set up and operate nuclear power plants. Accordingly, even our FDI policy says that FDI is prohibited in the energy sector, atomic energy. However, FDI is allowed in supply of equipment for nuclear power plants. So if you have a foreign company can set up its base in India to manufacture the equipment to be supplied to nuclear power plants, but it cannot operate a nuclear power plant. In 2016, we have amended the Atomic Energy Act. Through this amendment, we have enabled NPCIL to enter into partnership with another government owned PSU for setting up of nuclear power plant. So NPCIL can enter into PSU to set up nuclear power plant, but it cannot enter into agreement with private sector. So you can see here NPCIL and NTPC, they have come together to set up a joint venture called as Ashwini for setting up of nuclear power plants. But joint venture between NPCIL and private sector is not allowed. Even though the details of what exactly the amendments are proposed are not highlighted in the budget, but we can expect that we will amend the Atomic Energy Act to facilitate more of private sector investment in setting up and operating nuclear power plants. Mostly they will be allowed in setting up of Bharat small modular reactors. The details are awaited as to in what way the private sector can be involved. Let's wait and watch as to what will be the amendments. But broadly, I do think it is more about facilitating private sector investment. So these are the developments related to nuclear energy. So you can see here the question. The Bharat small modular reactors are small sized nuclear power plants which are assembled on the site itself. These reactors are considered to be safer, right? Presently, there are no such reactors at a global level. According to an article in Indian Express, there are at least two small modular reactors which are already in operation. I guess one is in Russia and another one is China. They are in the experimental stage. They are already developed. So because we already have such reactors at a global level, it is incorrect. Right answer is 1 and 2 only. All the nuclear power plants are run and managed by NPCIL. It is right. FDI is prohibited in atomic energy but allowed in the manufacturing of nuclear energy equipment. Private sector is allowed to construct and operate nuclear power plants in India. As of now, it is not allowed because the amendments are not yet done. So as of now, it is not allowed. Right answer is 192 only. Now coming to the social sector. With respect to social sector, what I have done is I have gone through the budget discussion, that is the budget speech of the finance minister. I've also gone through the economic survey chapter on social sector. After going through the budget speech as well as economic survey, I've highlighted all the important prelims pointers related to social sector. For example, you can see in mains 2024, there was a question with respect to pattern and trend of public expenditure on social services. Similarly, In prelims 2024, there were two questions related to Pradhan Mantri Surakshit Matritva Abhiyan and Pradhan Mantri Shram Yogi Mandan. All of this are basically related to schemes, policies, and initiatives, which are very, very factual. All of these things are very factual. So what I have done is to make your understanding about the budget and economic survey comprehensive. All of these things, I have tried to simplify this as much as possible, and I have prepared very short notes about the schemes and the policies of the government with respect to social sector, which are basically announced in the budget, and a mention is there in the economic survey. You must understand, in the prelims, it is humanly not possible to remember all the schemes and policies related to social sector. But what I can tell you is at least focus on the schemes and policies whose name is mentioned in the budget speech, or let's say in the economic survey. At least if you focus on those schemes and policies, you could say that to a certain extent I have prepared for these topics. That is why I have incorporated these things in the PPT. I've not just incorporated these things in the PPT, I've also incorporated a lot of practice questions also, so that you revise it and then solve the practice question to understand whether you are whether you have revised that particular topic correctly or not. Now, for example, this is a trend in terms of social sector expenditure. These are the schemes mentioned in the budget. This is about Saksham Anganwadi and Poshan 2.0. So generally, whenever you are reading about a scheme, please focus on the nature of scheme, the nodal ministry, and some important components of the scheme, which becomes quite important. Example being, in prelims 2018, there was a question related to NFSA. What you can do, read this thoroughly and then try to solve this particular practice question. Same way, you can read about Pradhan Mantri Street Vendors Atmanirbhar Nidhi and try to solve that particular practice question. You could also look at the budget announcement as well. Same way, Social Security Scheme for online platform workers and eShram portal. You can see the practice MCQ there. Same about all the schemes announced in the budget, like Gyan Bharatam Mission, National Geospatial Mission, Urban Challenge Fund. I have also highlighted in detail as to what exactly is Urban Challenge Fund. And to ensure that you are able to understand the schemes easily, I have tried to keep it as simple as possible. Okay. Then about basic concepts related to employment. In fact, I do remember I had covered this thing in greater detail in the last year's budget. Everything related to employment, like what is the present employment status, what is labor force participation rate, what is worker population ratio, who measures employment in India. Everything related to employment from the perspective of prelims is already covered. I will provide you with the link in the description box below. In case if you're not gone through this particular part related to employment, please complete that part. It is quite important from the prelims. So as you can see, here I have incorporated all the terms related to employment, categories of workers, what are the different measures to approaches to measure employment, usual status, current weekly status, current daily status, then which are the official labor survey reports in India, current employment scenario, sector-wise contribution, then you have number of practice questions also, then unemployment situation, employment linked incentive scheme, which was launched in the last year's budget, which becomes equally important for your upcoming prelims as well. So everything is already there in the PPT. Please try to go through this particular PPT. In case if any of you have any problems, feel free to reach out to me. You can always reach out to me in the comment section. You can ask me your doubts in the comment section. As soon as as I get free, I see your doubts, I'll get back to you. Don't worry. Okay. So we are finally done with the discussion of the budget and economic survey. Like I said, all of these PPTs I have converted into white background, and the link has been provided in the description box there. So you can download those white background PPT. Thank you so much, and all the best for the prelims examination.